All right, we are going to get to our next caller. We've got, Jacob is the atheist psychic medium. Did you catch that, Richard?
Hello, Ethan.
Yeah,
Hello, Richard.
I think so.
Hey, Jacob, how you doing?
Hi, Jacob.
Good. How are you guys?
Doing well.
Good, thank you.
So tell us, Richard specifically, a little bit about your abilities.
So I was on, I don't know how many podcasts ago it was, but I called in and I talked to Ethan and Dave, and I explained a little bit to them, but I'll explain to you. Ever since I've been little and I can remember, I've been able to see and talk to spirits. And I'm 19 years old. I live in Illinois as well. And yeah, that's about it.
Are you the, sorry, I'm not sure if I remember the episode. Just refresh my memory. Are you the guy who offered to fly Ethan out, or have I got that wrong?
So we are, no. That's Jacob. Yeah, we are in talks with him and Dave Warnock to fly in, I believe it was mid-August, or was that right, Jacob?
Correct.
Okay, so
yep, correct.
We are working with him. He's supposedly going to have his film, camera crew come out, and Dave and he's going to take us to some hot spots, and we're going to be able to test his abilities. So fingers crossed. I'm really excited. I hope it happens. But I guess, Richard, what questions do you have?
You know what? I don't think you'll be able to do this. I don't think you'll be able to attempt to do this, and that's fair enough. I'd love to give this challenge to you, regardless. If you can't do it, it's fine. I'm no pressure or anything. But there is something I've always said, that somebody can prove to me that they're either telepathic or psychic, because there is one thing about me that only someone who has departed this earth and myself know. So if somebody is really psychic, they will either they'll either demonstrate that they're actually in communion with people from beyond the grave, or they can read my mind. And that's just an open challenge to anybody who professes to have psychic abilities. I'd love for you to be able to tell me what that thing is that only myself and a departed person know. And like I say, it's if you want to say no, that's fine. It's just an open challenge.
So allow me to explain a little bit about myself and what real psychic mediums are able to do. So, and I have a lot of unanswered questions. I'm not somebody that knows I don't know everything there is about psychic mediums and stuff like that, because a lot of psychic mediums have a lot of unanswered questions of their own. But if we were to meet in person and you have, I'm guessing, a relative or somebody that you know that has passed on, correct?
Well, somebody's passed on, yes, who knows something about me. I'm not going to fall for cold reading techniques either. So I'm not suggesting you're doing that on purpose, but you were definitely cold reading then. I'm not suggesting by any stretch of the imagination you're doing it deceitfully and you're doing it on purpose, but you were definitely cold reading then. You asked me a question and you gave me an alternative, and you were trying to fish for information. My wife's doing a master's in educational psychology. I go through her books all the time. I keep nicking her books, her textbooks.
So not everybody, like, I don't just walk up to people and I don't just hear and talk to dead people, okay?
Okay.
A lot of the times what's happening is that they choose to present themselves to me, whether that be for reasons of, and I'm talking about dead people here, reasons they have, or reasons for other reasons that are unknown. They'll reach out to me. So for instance, I'll tell you a quick story. When I was younger, the way that I figured out about how I was able to work with my abilities is me and my family, which is, we're all non-religious, by the way. So I didn't grow up religious or anything like that. We lived in a really old house in Canton, Illinois. Really old. It was built in the 1900s. And my dad purchased.
Can I just stop you? Sorry, this is just an aside, but it always makes me laugh when I watch these shows in the US and everybody says I lived in a really old house from 1900. I'm from the UK. My house is 80 years old and it's a relatively new house. Yeah, it's a relatively new house. So we have houses that go back hundreds and hundreds of years like a standard. Sorry, that's just an aside. Carry on with your story.
Well, okay, to be fair,
Well, there's
I think older houses can be a little bit more spooky, but that's only because they're older and they creak more and they, not necessarily up to code, so there's more problems. But anyways, Jacob, please continue.
The reason for older homes having a lot more paranormal experiences, I feel like, is they have a lot more history and a lot more time to build on top of the paranormal. For instance, like death, tragic losses that might have happened in the house, or tragic things that might have happened there that would cause spirits to stay there. Like, for instance, jails, prisons, places of war, stuff like that. So that's why I feel like older places hold more paranormal stories and energies. But let me get on with my story. So when I was younger, this was around 5 or 6 years old, I didn't know anything about my dad purchasing a home from this lady, okay? And he purchased the home from this lady. She was around 80. Her family, Ruby's family, was basically the one that sold it to my dad because she was very old. She had dementia. And after my dad bought the home, he had us kids. I have a brother, and he married my mom. And around 5 or 6 years old, I would start communicating with this woman. And later on, I found out her name is Ruby, and he's the one that my dad bought the house from. But I wasn't communicating with my family about this. Back then, I was very young. I was really, I don't know, I felt like I was kind of oblivious to it first, and then I kind of grew into it. And I was able to start talking to more spirits, like my grandmother that passed away. And I started going over to friends' houses when I grew up more. And that's when I realized what I was really able to do, because in my town of Canton, Illinois, we have a lot of history. And a lot of the friends' houses that I was going over to, they were really old as well, too. And there's a lot of spiritual experiences I gathered from that. But that's just one story that I honestly would have no clue of knowing who this lady was. And I've been talking to her. She's actually like my grandma. I still talk to her this day when I visit my mom. But
I'm going to ask you a question about that just shortly, but I want to go back. I know I was kind of joking a little while ago when I said that, we have really old properties in Britain, and we do. What criteria would you say is kind of age range wise is, because you said the older the property is, the more paranormal activity is. Is there some kind of criteria you might have that suggests that at a certain age, a property is more likely to have a certain amount of activity, and the further back you go, the exponentially that growth in that activity because of the age of the house?
I think I worded it a little wrong, and that is that it's time that matters. So obviously having a house that's 100 years old versus 20, there's a lot more room for either bad things to happen, like murder, death, suicide, stuff of that nature, which normally causes these spirit phenomenons to stay on Earth. And that's what I mean by that. There's a lot more time. You have a brand new building on a piece of
that's
land.
why I'm asking, because as I said, that we have a lot of old houses in Britain, and although we do have reports of hauntings and things like that, that's undeniable. It's not in any way. It's only with the real old houses that occurs usually. It's the very odd occasion where it's a newer house, but it's the really, really old houses. So that certainly predate most of the houses in America, I would say. So I'm just trying to figure out, there seems to be a cultural disparity. That's what I'm trying to say. In the US, it might be houses of like 100 years old and more where hauntings occur. Whereas in the UK, there are lots of houses that are 100 years old, 150 years old, 200 years old, where there are no hauntings. The hauntings in the UK are associated with properties that are much older. So it seems to me like it might be a psychological phenomenon in people, which is connecting them to kind of the mystery of antiquity, if you like. So where for the US, where you don't have many older houses, people are more attracted to those older houses, and that's where they kind of pick up that vibe from. Whereas in the UK, we're going back much further to get those hauntings. And I'm just wondering on what your thoughts might be on that.
Well, that's a very interesting theory. I'd have to think about that more, But do you have any more questions that you'd like to ask, not related to that?
I have one
That's
more
something that we
question.
can think about.
Is there
Okay.
anything you could do for us right now to demonstrate your ability?
No. Now, if you ever have a psychic medium or somebody that is claiming to be able to go on the phone and speak things and tell you about, past loved ones or something like that, normally they're trying to scam you. Okay. Now, there might be.
That sounds like a not true Scotsman fallacy.
But
why are you making the assessment?
Really.
Sorry, go on, continue. Go on.
Sorry,
I'm
there's
sorry,
a
what did you say?
delay, Jacob and Richard, so sometimes we talk over each other. It's definitely not intentional.
So the reason I don't know exactly what Richard said, but the reason for that being is because I have to be next to somebody that could, or in a place that has had that energy happen to it. I can't do anything over the phone. So to answer your question, Ethan, no, I couldn't do anything right now. But when we do meet in person, I'll definitely be able to show and do things on camera that will definitely impress you. Yes.
Well,
so, to answer your question, no.
I think that's a perfect spot to put a pin in it. Unless you had any other questions, Richard.
No, I was. My only train of thought there was that I was just trying to point out that just because you can't do it, it doesn't mean that other psychic mediums can't do it, and that they're trying to scam you if they claim they can. That's all I was trying to put forward.
That's why I also said too that I've never heard of anybody that has successfully been able to do that I can reliably say so as yes. I wouldn't want to go out there and say there's psychic mediums that could do that, because I personally never heard of any that I believe in, because there's a lot of psychic mediums that I've been able to disnounce. Like, I don't know if you've ever heard of the show Dead Files, but I've actually interviewed some of the people that have been on that show. We actually had the show come to Canton, Illinois, which is a funny coincidence. And I've actually interviewed and went inside that home that still has paranormal stuff happening to this day. And I've interviewed that family, and I've been able to disnounce and discredit all the stuff they did on that show. I've proved it all to be false. So
okay.
One the episode, if you guys want to look at it,
go ahead.
It's called Devil's Plaything. It's called Devil's Plaything or Devil's Playhouse.
Okay.
You guys should write that down if you want to go look at that later on.
Devil's Playhouse.
I have an episode that I'm working on with that family. I've recorded all of it. I've had my my film team out in Los Angeles come down, and we've interviewed that whole family. And we're going to be also releasing our own episode of that house. And yeah, that's about it.
I look forward to meeting you and going over all this. But one last question. It's from Philip Leitch. Thanks for the $5 super chat. I still want to know the answer to Richard's question. If mediums give true answers unknowable to them, how do we know they can't read minds?
Now, that is a great question. I'm sorry I didn't answer that previously. I completely forgot about that. So that's a tough one for me to answer. Honestly, that's a tough one for me to answer. The best answer that I could have saying that we cannot read minds, and that's going against what he just said, is the fact that when I go into places, I sometimes have visions, or I guess anomalies come talk to me about potentially dead family members or things that have happened to them. I went to Gettysburg. That was a very interesting one, a story for a different time, but that's without other human beings be there that could be related to those instances. So that's a theory, the mind reading theories, that's a theory, but for a lot of my experiences, I'm normally by myself or with a small camera crew that doesn't have any relation to the spot that I'm going to. So I don't know how that would necessarily tie into the theory, but I'm just using my, examples to best answer that question. So I personally believe I don't read minds by any means, but, that's an interesting theory. I don't have all the answers, but it's a very interesting theory to think about.
All right. Well, Jacob, thank you so much for your call today, and I look forward to speaking again soon and getting this trip set up.
Yeah, great call. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Richard, as well. It was very nice talking to both of you.
All right. You have a good one.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Any final thoughts before we get to our next caller?
I'd love talking about things like that. I'd like to say that big test for me, that big test for me that would prove that somebody's either psychic or can read minds. That is the one thing. If they turned around to me, they would convince me on the spot. There's literally there's no way they could know. The chances are phenomenal that they could know that.
So I'll go as far as to tell people the person I want to communicate with, and it would be my brother who passed away. We had our own unique language, and there are only 3 people, including myself, that know that language. If any psychic or medium could decipher or say something in our lingo, which I assure you is not easy, then I would definitely be fairly convinced. And that's my challenge to any and all psychics. Find out what my brother's and I language was and communicate in it, and I will be one of your biggest supporters.